All right, it's 9:30, so we'll call the NLTUA annual organizational meeting to order. If everybody could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let the roll call show that all current board members are here and present. Next agenda item is annual sewer report 2022 from Jacob.
Sure. Hi. Good morning. I won't take a lot of time, but I just want to call out a few highlights, and then I guess if there are any questions after that, I can take those. So one of the core values of Jacobs is we have 4 core values we work off of, and one of those is we do things right. So there's 2 key components of doing things right, or 2 things that we really focus on, and one is safety, the other is compliance. So with safety, currently we're over 1,380 days without a lost time or recordable incident. It's almost 4 years of everybody going home the way they came. So we're very proud of that number, and we strive to keep that going. We do that through training. All of our staff are trained in confined space entry, CPR, fall protection, ladder safety. There's a multitude of safety trainings going on throughout the year. Another component of us getting to this point is we encourage staff to stop work, no matter what is going on and who's doing the work. If we see something that's not safe, everybody on our staff has the right to stop that project right there in the tracks and figure out what needs to be done to make it a safe, be completed safely anyway. And then we do weekly safety site inspections to call out items of the plant where there may not be guarding that's correct, or there may be fall protection needed in certain areas. We've installed netting at all the lift stations. We installed netting at the plant on some of the manholes there. We still have a few more to do. That's fall protection netting, so the guys don't have to wear down-fall protection. The netting's there to catch them. And keep them from falling into tanks. There's quite a few tanks that are opened frequently up at the plant, so we want to make sure that nothing happens. We also do what we call beyond zero observations. So the supervisors are required every week. We go out in the field and we just make sure everybody is wearing their PPE, personal protective equipment. Everybody's doing things as per our standards. And then there's multiple other, above our project level regional safety inspections and such. The other component, compliance. So we pride ourselves on perfect compliance. Sometimes that doesn't happen. So, and the other part of that is perfect reporting of non-compliance. So we always want to make sure that we're honest, we're upfront with our regulator. We report according to requirements for non-compliance. We're thorough in our investigations and finding the root cause, and then having corrective actions made. And we have a whole tool that we use called we call it a PEG. It's a preliminary excursion guide, but it's an internal tool of ours. It goes based on the 5 whys, narrow down to the root cause of what caused non-compliance, create an action plan, and address that issue. So, with this approach, we've built a good relationship with the regulators. We've had 2 regulators for this facility, particularly over the last 15 years. Both of them we've had great relationship with. They trust in what we're doing, and they had multiple site inspections and never found an issue. So it's worked out well. We did have 1 non-compliance in 2022 in March. We exceeded the total phosphorus limit with a 0.6 milligram per liter result. The daily maximum was 0.5. It was a one-off incident. We were back in compliance the next day on the sampling. We There's an explanation to it that goes in more detail in the report, but basically we did some maintenance and cleaning on the system, and I think we stirred up some solids, and that's what we do caused the excursion. But it was all reported as needed, and no issues. And then just one of the big ticket items that came up, and this was late 21, early 22. I'm sure everybody's aware, but the main lift station, we lost one pump, failed. It was an older pump that had been rebuilt 5 or 6 years prior. And then we had the second pump. There's 2 pumps in the station. Second pump was 3 years old. A month later, that pump fails. So this happened right during COVID, right during time when their supply chain is just crazy, as it still is. And pump lead times were 6-8 months. So we had to man the station. We have a bypass pump we set up. We man the station 24/7 for bypass pump watch. We had to rent another pump, so we had a backup redundancy. And then through help with Chris's team and our team, we manned the station until we could find out a solution. And we ended up talking with our one of our reps. We took the 2 failed pumps and we made what we coined as the Franken pump. And the Franken pump was done within 5 to 7 days. We put it back in the wet well, and it ran for 136 days after, and until the new pumps arrived. Yes, and the craziest thing about that is we were putting in the new pump, got the new pump running, and the Franken pump died that day. But it made it. It got us through. It saved. Oh gosh, I estimated about $120,000. If we would have had to man that station for the 136 days plus the pump rental, it was an astronomical cost. So that was a big win in what wasn't a great situation. Turned out the best it could. And then just some of our maintenance. I just put out that we do try to be proactive in all of our maintenance. So we do the manhole inspections annually, where we go around and we actually look at every single manhole on the system. We typically do this in the fall with help of Chris's team. And we're just we look for defects or issues with flow or issues with the base of the manhole, the outside, everything. We also do annual ARV inspections, so those are the air release valves. There's quite a few on the system. They take the trapped air within the system and release it to the atmosphere. If those aren't maintained, they fail. They end up being a sanitary sewer overflow source a lot of times, because when they fail, they may stick open and wastewater just pumps out of the manhole and down the road. So we do those inspections annually. We go through, pull each one of them, completely clean them out, and repair or replace them if needed. So that's just some of the proactive maintenance we do, in addition to flushing like the north and south ends of the force mains and semi-annually. And there's quite a few other examples as well. That's pretty much it. All I had for highlights. I guess if there are any questions, I don't want to take up all your time on this.
The number of employees you have.
Yes.
Do you guys recruit locally? I know some of them are skilled trades.
Yeah, no, everybody that works with us is local. We do recruit locally. We brought one. We just hired one gentleman from California, but he has family here in Traverse.
Okay.
But typically, it's Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay, now we'll move on to our public comments. If anybody would like to make a public comment.
At the regular meeting.
Okay. Okay, hearing no takers on the public comment, we'll move on to our election of officers. We have 4 officers up for appointment, correct? chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. So if we start,
I've seen the motion all, if you've selected who that's gonna be, it can be one motion or it can be separately, so.
all right, we'll start with chair. Does anybody have a nomination for chair?
I'll nominate Mike.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I think it's good to have him chair because right now he's the only township representative on the board. Township, outside of those, so.
Mm-hmm.
And he might be the only one who wants to do it.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote, starting with Will,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
and yes. So Mike, congratulations, you're now the chair.
Oh, yeah.
Next up, we have a nomination for vice chair.
I'll nominate Chris McCann.
I'll second.
All right, moved by Chris, supported by Mike, to nominate Chris McCann for vice chair. Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote starting with Mike.
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Will?
Yes.
All right. Next up, we have secretary.
I'll nominate Will. We'll spread it up.
Isn't the secretary Joni?
No, secretary has to be a board member.
And
Okay.
you don't have any duties, there might be resolutions sometimes that you have to sign, things like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
Mhm.
Sure, I'll second my nomination.
Any discussion? All right, roll call vote starting with Mike,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
and yes. And last but not least, our treasurer. And the duties of the treasurer are, does not have to be a board member, correct?
Joni.
Yes,
Sorry, the treasurer does not have to be a sitting board member to be treasurer.
that's my understanding, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought I read.
Mhm.
And they don't have any real financial duties.
Still have to report to the board and the chair, yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
but they're not doing any bill pay or anything like that, correct?
That's correct, the chair co-signs.
Okay.
Just like the secretary.
I would nominate Cindy Benson, if you want to do it. She's already the treasurer, but is that a conflict?
Clerk and treasurer shouldn't be the same person. That was in the audit. So
That's fine,
that's,
that's fine.
All right, I'll support that nomination. Any discussion?
I think we should probably explain to everybody like what that role is, and how it's different than being the clerk and how there's supposed to be checks and balances between the two.
Okay.
I wasn't really. Maybe Joni could take this, I don't know.
Oh, explains, treasurer's role is similar to, I would imagine, just like the treasurer of the village, she'll be reporting on revenues, which she already has been doing. She's receiving most of the receipts, the majority of it, I do the ACH, I bill on behalf of the NLTUA, she'll receive them. She takes the deposits down, just like the village, there's separation. And then I do certainly handle all of the payments on behalf of the NLTUA, which will be co-signed by the chair. I'm trying to think of, so maybe then annual reporting, she could report on, again, revenues. That's the primary focus of the treasurer, so. Revenues and bonds.
Any other discussion or clarification?
There was talk of wasn't one of the things we were gonna split this up between the township and the village, weren't we gonna try to put somebody down at that office in one of these roles? And,
Can we hold off until we get our fifth person, which will be next meeting?
yeah, I think we can table this. Do we have to, Jim, do we have to elect, do we have to elect these board members at the annual meeting?
That's the purpose of the annual meeting is to elect the officers. I mean,
Well, we're sitting with an incomplete board as part of the problem.
yeah, if you didn't do it during the annual meeting, there's no reason why you couldn't do it at some other time. Or you could do a temporary appointment.
Well, let's do I would make a motion for a temporary appointment of Cindy as treasurer. And we can revisit this at the next meeting when we have full township representation and possibly someone in the township office willing to take on this role.
If I may, the treasurer appointment can be two things. It can be an appointment like the secretary on the board. It can be a position. However, Cindy is hired on behalf of the NLTUA
As
at this
liaison,
time. Yeah,
I know,
Yeah.
it's kind of confusing, I think, to a lot of people. We haven't really got to that yet, but.
I mean, if you're gonna assign somebody those duties down at the township, I'm just saying, you can think about that, but I don't know how that would work.
Yeah,
Let's look at this, and you got a motion on the floor?
Mm-hmm.
The motion, what, to table it?
Right now, the motion is to nominate Cindy as the treasurer.
well, can we,
So,
all right, well,
She could be the deputy treasurer, and then you could appoint a member as your treasurer.
okay. Well, we need to withdraw that motion then and
Okay.
start over.
so that was Chris's motion originally.
Or wait for next meeting, we can have more discussion on it.
Yeah, let's have separate, I'll make a motion to nominate Cindy for deputy treasurer. That's it.
Okay.
I can get support on that.
I'll second it.
Okay, so it's moved by Will, supported by Mike to nominate Cindy for deputy treasurer. Any further discussion on that? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, starting with Will.
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Mike? And yes. All right, so we have our 4 officers for our time being. And we'll revisit that at the next meeting.
Well, okay, so I would nominate myself to be board member treasurer, at least interim. For now, just so we have a board member that is holding that position.
Okay.
And that could be changed later, but for now, that way we have a board member as treasurer.
So you have Will Harper as interim treasurer.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll make the motion, so he doesn't make a motion for himself. That's support.
okay, so made by Mike, supported by Chris to name Will Harper our temporary treasurer. Any discussion on that? Okay, roll call starting with Mike.
Yep.
Chris? And yes. All right, so we're all set there, which will bring us to our adjournment of our annual meeting and move us into our regular meeting. Do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda? Okay, Approval of minutes from the August 15th meeting. I had a chance to look at those.
Joni, you got the check from the township, right, for the Woodley Lake extension?
I did.
Move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Support.
All right, moved by Mike, supported by Chris to accept the minutes as presented. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, minutes are accepted. Now we'll move into our public comment portion of the regular meeting. If anybody would like to make a comment.
Okay, Alan Dalzell, I'm in the township, not in the SAD. I noticed when we hired the interim village manager, that all of a sudden, that person was almost part of the board. For a few days, he even sat up here. And I see we have the village manager here now also, and I hear him getting asked questions, and I don't understand. The village manager is not part of the SAD as such. He's a public person, just like we are. Yet he got to talk in the past just like he was one of the board members, and we're limited. So if you're going to include the village manager somehow into the discussions of the board, then I think you need to allow equal time, at the same time, a township person to speak up, not just limit us to our 3-minute discussion and never come back with any other discussion. So that's one of my comments. For next year, we couldn't do this for this year's annual meeting, but for next year, I believe we need to start looking at evaluating and revising the rules and regulations, et cetera, of NLTUA. I say NLTUA because I can't say it the other way. For example, I think the member at large should not be a member of either council. Should not be on the township board or the village council. I think the member at large should come from at large. I hope you don't make any major decisions today, because I know there will be another member from the board, from the township, for the November meeting. So I would ask you to withhold any information or any big decisions today. I was going to comment on maybe we need to hire somebody to be our manager over the entire board. We have the people running the system, but they don't run the finances, et cetera, et cetera. And we are in financial problems and we have to get out. But I didn't know, I hadn't been able to find out what the, where was it on here? in discussion items. The liaison, I don't know who the liaison is, I don't know where the liaison came from, and I don't know what the liaison has to do, because I've never been able to read about it. So maybe that takes the place of what I was talking about. So the two major things I want to stress again is what is the role and why is there a role of the village manager at this board meeting? And hope you do not make any major decisions until the position is filled. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Anyone else?
You know, I would kind of agree with what he said too, that as far as the representation should probably be more focused on, you know, the citizens at large that live within the village and the township. Because now I see none of that, you know, it's village council, township. I think that would be a great idea, because it's gonna allow for more transparency. It's gonna allow people in the village and the township to know probably more what's going on here. Because let's face it, there's not a big attendance here of residents. You know, but the information they get comes down through, I don't know what avenue, but I don't think a lot of it gets out there. So to me, it sounds like a wonderful idea. So I kind of second that.
All right, thanks. Anything else?
Chris,
Anyone in Zoom? Yeah, I see you there, Betsy.
sorry, I don't have a little hand. I don't know why sometimes it shows and sometimes it doesn't. Thank you. I support what Alan said as well. Hope no major decisions today without the township rep. And I think the discussion, brief one, makes sense to have an at-large person that's represented. I don't know the agenda for today. I could not find it online, so I don't know if there is one. And I don't know what the discussion's going to be. I understand it's the consultant that's going to give us some feedback. That will be interesting. But as you go forward, I've also heard some rumblings about discounting the potential development in the village. And I just want to remind this board that they turned down another developer and did not give them a break. And I'm very concerned that you could open yourself up to a lawsuit if you chose to give a break to this developer when you turned the other one down. Thank you. I'll wait to hear the discussion. Look forward to it.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, hearing none, or is there any other correspondence? Okay. Payment of the bills?
I have a point of order question.
Yeah.
Shouldn't Mike be running the meeting now?
Oh, yeah.
You're thinking the same thing?
I was, but I wasn't gonna.
I was thinking the same thing, but
Yeah, there you go.
Well, he's the
Pass the
vice.
gavel.
He's the vice.
Not that you don't run a good meeting.
No, less responsibility, the better.
I call for an end of the meeting. All right, as Chris said, payment of the bills. Joni?
Yeah, I'd just like to note, since we'll be going in the clerk's report, that the report represents all these bills being paid to date. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. As you noted, that the payment for the Northport Point extension of the sewer main was paid, and we received the payment from the township for that. So it's in and out.
We had one more outstanding, right? Or you guys haven't done the work yet? Just that.
Right.
That connection guy that. What's the timeline on that?
We don't know at this point. Okay. Contractor has received anything from any contractors on that extension from Woolsey Lake.
Okay.
Yet.
Not that it matters to this board that much, but are you guys gonna try to get that recouped, the township?
We're trying to balance it. There's some folks think that we should take a look at it and start looking at the legal costs of going after $9,000.
Yeah.
I thought it was more than that, if you take them all, because there were a bunch of missing,
Yeah.
well, it's only $9,000.
Well, the one building, one hookup. was
Yeah, but
$9,000.
wasn't there lateral missing here? Yeah, so it adds up, I think, but anyway, it's up to you guys,
Something to look
Not-
at.
it's not our concern.
Compile it. See if we end up with.
All right,
You guys have an opinion?
I don't know, I'd have to look at
Well,
it.
just as a point of order, we're paying the bills.
Yeah,
We
we're
can
paying the
talk
bills.
about
Okay.
that.
I was taking us off track.
Thank you. Any further discussion on paying the bills?
No.
Anything from you, any concerns, anything popping up?
No,
So do we accept paying the bills?
a motion.
We need a motion to pay the bills in the amount of,
$75,197.18.
yep, so moved.
Support.
We have a second. Any discussion? If we had discussion, all those in favor?
Let's do roll call.
A roll call?
Yeah.
Will?
Yes.
Yes.
Chris?
Yes. Excuse me.
Staff reports. Clerk, treasurer report.
Okay, so as I mentioned, the financial reports that you have a trial balance, cash transaction report there for you today, represent all these bills being paid. We are about to bill for the third quarter of 2023 here this week. So the utility bills will be going out. I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding that report. And I'd just like to also report to the board that we did receive a new sewer connection that will be coming on 5th Street. There's a new home that will be being built there. So far to date for the year, we have a new home on South Shore and the new home on 5th Street. But I did prepare a sewer permit for a house on Calhoun Lane. It's a new road in the village. So we're waiting for that payment.
So, what we have here is, fund 590, it's a sewer fund, but shouldn't we be getting a report on the debt service fund?
No, that is with the village, so the finance committee and then the village council as a
Oh, yeah, you're
whole
right.
for the debt. Yeah.
Okay.
And then just one other, at our next month's meeting, we have to start drafting our budget. So we'll have budget worksheet and because it's nice for those to go to the board by December. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Liaison report.
Okay, as she said, we're about ready to bill, so I will happily accept everybody's money and hopefully we will stay in the black this time.
Yeah, we're there.
We're there.
Any questions for the liaison? Superintendent's report.
Okay, we'll be looking at flushing the force mains, which are the end of the mains at Northport Point Road and down on Indian Beach. We'll do that in coordination with the Illinois Township Fire Department, as we've done in the past. Probably looking at the first week in November. So that's a biannual exercise we do with Jacobs. Monitoring well number 7S, is that right, Justin?
Yes, sir.
That one is still in the hands of Brian and Newhoff. I don't have an update on that.
They're working on what's called a Part 22, which is basically a decommission and a recommission. So the contractor has to work through that. With Eagle, they're working on that document. Then we'll hear some feedback.
What he said. Due to vandalism is what it come down to one of the monitoring well pipes. It's back on near the Nagano Trail. So also with Brian and Newhoff, I understand it's the ferric chloride room I should say, revamping of the chloride room or addition to the exterior chloride room. Again, I don't have much to report on that. Wait to hear back from their engineers. What else do we have on there?
Well, can I ask a little
Sure.
bit? So I'm trying to picture at the end of Nagano, where is this?
Over the bridge, okay, and just over the bridge on the Ganabun off to the south side of the,
By the fairy gardens.
yes, the ferry, yes, the ferry garden.
At the Frog?
Yes.
Just
I
Yeah,
never
it's
noticed
down the
anything in
road.
there.
Just past it, you'll see two standing about chest height, 4 foot height,
White pipes.
2 white pipes.
And the kids vandalized them, or so we assume
Yeah.
that somebody
Yeah.
vandalized them?
Yeah.
Was there a police report?
Not to, nowhere,
There was.
so, we report to the state, so. Yes, so,
Is this some- I'm sorry,
No,
is this
go
something that could be covered under an insurance claim? The cost for that?
Vandalism, yeah, we have a equipment failure. I could certainly look into that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, it would.
so, okay, so then, let's see, the DPW, we assisted in mowing the wastewater treatment plant area up there. And then we received 8 barrels of calcium nitrate for the chemical feed at Northport Point lift station. So 4 in place, that seems to be working. Just out of, I guess, personal curiosity, I've been checking, I would say weekly, the flow on North Shore Drive where we had the lining, the pipe lining done. And just to see if it's consistent, and it appears to be. The flow, I think it's made a big improvement, hopefully a reduction in groundwater coming in, so about that. Besides that, I guess I'd just like to echo what Mark's, said. These guys are very, very professional and really good to work with, and don't miss a trick. So I appreciate their help, cooperation, and guidance. So we're very fortunate to have them on board. So like that.
Going back a couple months ago, we had extended discussions about scoping or putting the camera down certain areas. Where did we end up landing on that? I think I know, but.
Yeah, I mean, we determined that it's PVC pipe. It wouldn't, and it was kind of laid to rest that it was ductile iron misconception. And, the feeling of the engineers, with Jacobs and outside engineering and some of the folks that deal with the sanitary systems, they felt that it probably wasn't necessary. We're not seeing a great reduction or any kind of, I guess, what our pump draw is. Are we pulling
I'm
on?
sorry.
On the
What are we
sewer
talking
main?
about?
Just,
Sewer main.
I'm sorry, it is still on the CIP, and
Yes.
we'll go over that, so it is still recommended
Yeah.
at this time.
But to get in there is going to be a little bit of a challenge. Yeah, I guess, to access that. So that's a design, something we have to talk about.
We've been able to resolve what type of pipe it is, but haven't resolved if we're gonna have to go in.
Yeah. Well, the pipe definitely is PVC. Yeah, and the plans have been determined, so.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll have to get together and figure out how we're gonna access that, because it's been a little bit of a trick.
Okay. Any questions for Chris? No. Jacob's operator?
No, I've only got the one update outside of working on the prime new monitoring wall. We got the second blower motor ready to get installed. The guys are gonna come up next Tuesday, so we'll have the redundancy reinstated at that point on Tuesday.
This is the blower motor that's been out for 4 years, that we've been working with them,
Yes, yeah.
Kennedy and
It's one of them, yes.
one of them, hey.
Yeah.
I just had to ask, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It's been a long, long road,
Yes.
Yeah. so
trying to
this will
get
be
that
it.
blower motor that, yeah.
This will put the two back in.
So,
I
good.
can give the history.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a running joke, but it was, the manufacturer was working with us to give us a discount on that motor, but that, I think,
Let's
it's been going on for many years, and we did get a discount on it, so,
Cool.
yeah.
That's everything that I have.
Okay, we got a couple of questions just
Yes, sir.
for just educational for me.
Sure.
You guys put a really detailed report out there, so I appreciate that a lot. You had a couple of instances, you had one, remove a washcloth from the grinder intake, and the other one was remove a significant amount of grease from a wet well. Do we charge for service calls when it's the fault of the homeowner?
That question goes to me.
Mhm.
We do for certain things, not always for grease unless we're called back repeatedly.
Right.
With grease, it's certainly, it can happen over time. The grinder pumps can build up. If it's excessive though, and we're called back month after month or a couple times a year, we look at that. But we do have a call out policy that we can charge. A lot of times, I don't want to step on your toes, but when you go out into the field, when our operators go out into the field, it could be a first time call. And that's one thing that we waive in our policy. And then there's, you do education with the homeowners as far as, what we have like a little pamphlet that's handed out to the homeowners, what not to put in your grinder pump. So we look at all that, but yes.
The first time they get a pass.
Essentially.
That's actually, okay. You send the materials out, what not to put in, and, okay.
Actually, the operators will pass that out.
Yeah, we always educate the homeowner on what we find, whether it be a, wet wipe or grease or whatever the issue is. So we try to get them out there with us so they can understand what caused it in the future.
So like I said, you guys give a very detailed report, I appreciait that. There's no misunderstanding after reading that.
We had a lot of grinder pump calls in August. We had a lot of these.
Yeah. Any questions for Jacobs? All right.
I'm out of order, but did we miss the liaison report? Or didn't I know about it?
The liaison? Yes, she gave it out.
Who's the liaison? Oh, okay.
You are out of order, but we're not going to have you read it.
Can I have one more comment?
Yes.
Last week we had our public open house, Tuesday.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. Tuesday, we didn't have anybody show up, so we're gonna do a little bit more advertising for that next year, try to get the school involved. We've had, last year we had quite a few members of the public come out and tour the facility. So we really like to get that involvement and then get people out to see what they.
I didn't know about it, or else probably would have tried to be there.
Okay. Well, we can give a tour anytime. We're open to give that. So
Yeah,
anytime you want to take a tour, let us know. But we'll do a little more advertising next year.
Okay.
And I do let the school know that it's going on.
Yeah, it didn't work out. Last year we did. So.
Okay, so I'm moving to number 7, discussion potential action items. We got the update connection fee determination from the village attorney as well as the NLTUA attorney. So how do you want to report that out? Who has that?
I was reading it just now. It's the first time I've seen it. And maybe I missed an email or something, or I don't know. But there's a lot in here to digest, and there's recommended actions both by this board and by the township and the village board, just from what I read. Sorry, during the Jacobs report, I was reading it. So we're going to need to put these recommendations on the next agenda for what this board needs to do, and also these recommendations need to go to the village and the township for them to take action. It looks like there's action required from all 3 entities, but it does look like we can get it sorted out. There's some we need to make this is not confidential. This is not.
Yep.
So that needs to be made a public document because people are going to want to see what's in it. It does resolve a lot finally. It's what we've been asking for a long time. So it puts a lot to rest about the Fairway View. And there's really not much else to say until that action is taken. And until the public gets to see what's in here. Basically, they said, I mean, if I can summarize, the ultimate decision is with the village, but there are limits based on equal protection of what you can and cannot do. Going round and round, if everybody agrees, the lowest REU we could offer the project would be 26.1. And that's based on the agreement of all the attorneys. But that would have to, there's a few hoops that have to be jumped through before we can get there. So it's still gonna be very high. You're still looking at $500,000 of connection fees. So anybody who's worried about them getting like the screaming deal can calm down, because it's gonna be a lot of money. So there you go.
Okay, so wait until the next meeting.
Yeah, we gotta put these things on the agenda. There's nothing really else to talk about.
To put it on the agenda for the village and the township to make.
And NLTUA next meeting, because a bunch of stuff is recommended that we do.
As the secretary and the treasurer, if you could help me with those
I will-
target items,
Yes,
that would be great.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, now I
Thank
have something to do.
All right.
No, you need to get those over to the township, so we know what we're.
Yeah, if you read it, it pretty much says what you need to do. And it's a lot of it's just housekeeping, you know, but we have to get everybody on the same page. It looks like because our RE schedules are not in agreement, and that's not a good legal situation to be in. We can fix it. It's all remediable very easily now, and I think the majority of the legal fees have been paid. We just have to do what they say to do now.
Okay.
And it all seems very reasonable to me, so.
Any other discussion? Or read?
I will put that on our website, our packet
Okay,
today.
thank you.
Mhm.
This one, presentation of the, we had asked Don to take a look at our, a number of things, and including rates, and looking out over the future, what we potentially could expect with recommendations. So not to take any more of your presentation away.
Great, well, thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. If you recall, our firm, Utility Financial Solutions, was hired to look at financial projection for the wastewater system. And I've completed that. I've incorporated some capital improvement projects that are projected that we'll talk about. And I'm going to share my screen, if that works for everybody. Perfect. Let me start the slideshow here. Just fine. Great. So just real briefly, again, my name is Dawn Lund. I'm Vice President of Utility Financial Solutions, and we do cost of service studies, financial plans, rate designs for utilities across the country. Well, I'm in Canada. We specialize in electric, water, wastewater, telecommunications, and gas. What I was hired to do is look at the finances for the wastewater system that incorporates things like capital. Debt is currently held separately on, the village has debt on their books. The township has debt on their books, so that's held separately. However, there are two charges that ratepayers are charged, an O&M charge and a debt charge. So the O&M charge obviously goes for the operation of the system. The debt charge is to pay off the debt of the system. I want to talk just about a couple of assumptions. I was given a capital improvement program, and I came up with 3 scenarios. The capital improvement program is significant for the system. The system isn't in stellar financial position currently, and so I actually took the liberty to come up with a few scenarios. What happens if we raise rates? What can we do to the system if we don't raise rates? What can we do to the system if we don't raise rates and we hold off until debt is paid off in 2028? And I'm going to walk through each of those scenarios. Now, the 2 scenarios that I came up with regarding capital might not be realistic, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to back in and say, okay, if this board chose not to have any rate adjustments, what really could you do in the system as far as capital improvements and support cash flow? So the capital program was provided by Jacobs. It entailed $2.5 million in 2024 through 2032. Keep in mind that's the projection period that I'm going to show you today, but beyond that, in 2038, there was a $1.6 million wastewater treatment improvement hanging out there in 2038. So everything I'm going to show you today is through 2032, and then the next capital improvement I had was 2038 of 1.6 million. So keep in mind that that's hanging out there. In this projection, I've incorporated the current loan that the system took this year for a capital improvement project. It was $135,000. That's incorporated in the projection to pay back at approximately $25,000 a year between principal and interest. The original debt on the system will be paid off in 2028. I'm going to talk about some ideas that I have about that just for the board's consideration. So this is a projection. Let me get rid of this black box for you guys here.
Thank you.
There we go. Sorry about that. So this is scenario 1. And what this is you can see this, these capital. This box you're trying to get rid of?
Maybe you can minimize it all the way left.
Just minimize, yeah, minus.
Yep.
All right.
Now it went.
Thank you so much. Okay. So keep in mind, the capital improvements that I've circled are about $2.5 million over the projection period, and this was provided by Jacobs as necessary capital. When I did receive the program, we did have a meeting with Jacobs to ensure that these are necessary, and my understanding is that they are. So this is the program as is with the necessary capital. And what it shows is, I actually look at 3 financial targets, but for you guys, I'm going to tell you what's the most important. I look at adjusted operating income, I look at projected cash balances, and I look at debt coverage ratio. And my main focus for you guys is cash balance. Obviously, we need to have cash in the system in order to pay bills and keep the system healthy. So that's going to be our main focus, that middle column that I've X'd there, projected cash balances. But what it shows is if we were to try to support this capital improvement program as is, we would need approximately 7% rate adjustments. All I'm trying to do with this rate adjustment is, you can see, keep this cash balance positive. The gray line indicates when debt is paid off, okay? And under this scenario, it's important for you guys to understand, you will see cash really jump when debt is paid off. I am assuming 100% debt continuance under the scenario. It will not be called debt payment, but in a sense, it would be moved to operations and maintenance. So under this scenario, with the capital improvement program as stated, the system would need to borrow $195,000. Currently, you have a potential to borrow this. My understanding is there was about $350,000 available from the village to the system. $135,000 was used this year of that. If we were to go with this program, the system would need to borrow $190,000 from that $350,000 as well. In addition, we would need 7% increases through 2028. Then you can see in 2028, when cash starts to get healthier here, the assumption is that currently what's in here is approximately $85. The township and the village charge very close to $85. Let's just round that for today's purposes. That would continue to be collected and put into O&M expenses. So the whole program here is, we would need to borrow an additional $190,000. We would need rate increases through the 2028 year when the debt is paid off, and the debt would continue at 100%. Do you guys have, what this does, again, my focus, you can see adjusted operating income is building, but really my focus is cash there. And keep in mind, in 2038, we have a $1.6 million wastewater treatment improvement hanging out there that's not in this projection. Do you guys have any questions on this scenario? Again, the next 2 scenarios were not given to me by Jacobs. I took the liberty to say, okay, I'm anticipating questions from the board. What happens if we don't have rate adjustments is a scenario, and what happens if we don't continue the debt? So I will go over those two scenarios next, but do you have any questions on this?
So 45.5%, that we already did that.
That's already done.
That was the
Yes.
big jump that we had.
Correct.
It was actually in 2023 though.
Yeah.
Well, but this is our fiscal year.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
fiscal year ending.
Okay, so that was the big pain. The 7%, as we talked about, it's gonna be a couple of bucks a month per user.
Yeah, and I will show you that at the end of the presentation. I've got that. So
$23.
The projected cash balance, are those cumulative?
So
are-
that's each fiscal year ending, yes. So
Okay,
at each fiscal year ending, that's the projected cash balance
for that year.
for that year.
But this is completing our capital improvement projects, which
Yes.
we've looked at, so, yeah, which is very important.
It's getting us where we need to be, for the long haul. Unfortunately, what this means is that some people in the public are under the assumption that once the debt is paid, that their sewer bills are gonna go down, and they're not. But they aren't gonna keep going up, it looks like, for the foreseeable future. That's under this scenario.
Well,
Because I'm seeing zero in 2029,
so,
because we're gonna switch that debt payment over to O&M.
and it depends what you want your cash balance to
Well,
be.
then, we're building up our CIP because we're gonna need that 1.6 million in
Right.
how many years it is?
So let's
15
just
years.
say at the end of 2032, we're not satisfied that the $317,000 is enough. You would need to continue rate increases. I was just trying to give you guys a base case scenario. Keep in mind that rate increases are not unique to this system. All systems across the country yearly should have small incremental rate increases to keep up with inflationary factors and cost increase. So that part is not unique to the system. You should be continuing rate adjustments.
So, okay, so the 317,000 projected cash balance, is that in the capital improvements column, that's an expected cost, or that's,
What you're expected to spend in that fiscal year on
and
capital.
it would still leave us the 317?
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
that makes sense.
But if I may, as you pointed out, in 2038, we have
Right, the big one.
a big
The
one.
Yeah,
$1.6
that's why we-
million that you cannot see on here, that needs to be spent.
Right,
Most likely, under this scenario, you will not have the cash to pay cash for that, obviously, right? If we continue this scenario. You will be in a better position for a couple things. One, to maybe use some of your cash balance to pay that down, and two, be in a better position to borrow.
yeah. Yeah, I wish that could keep going a few more years, so we'd sort of have, because it's between 2032 and 2038, that cash balance needs to significantly increase.
And keep in mind, and I'm not trying to throw this back at Jacobs because I don't expect an answer, but so between 2032 and 2038, the capital program had zeros in it until that big, and I doubt that's really going to happen, right? So I can extend this, and then I'll just have to get back with Jacobs. I'm sure there's going to be something every year there.
So in reality, in 29, 30, 31, 32, we are going to still need to keep having some incremental increases to keep up with,
Correct.
and to build up that cash reserve for that 2038.
I'm trying to give you right now
Yeah.
what I believe is worst case scenario with, just trying to get you to stabilize cash somewhat.
Okay.
This also assumes population or users all stay flat.
No, this counts on 2 new connections per year, but we're beating that.
So great question, and just so you know, that's a different scenario. The debt of the 2 connections a year is a different scenario. That's to pay off the debt. So what's included in here is status quo, what we know today.
Okay, good. So if we get bigger, we get more money, should be more money.
So it would be more money. It wouldn't necessarily mitigate any of the rate increases I've proposed here, or
Right. No,
it's just gonna put you in a slightly better cash position, which you will need.
Well, there's also, none of this takes into account if we do get this big project, which is going to be either $500,000 or $35,000 a year connection fee that's going into something, and then service fees on top of that. So that could totally change these numbers.
So what the connection fee will do for the big project is help mitigate some of the debt.
Yeah,
It won't necessarily, boost this cash balance. It could eventually, but in general, you have to let the dust settle, if you will, on the
Right.
debt, right? Between the township and the village, are they both able to do what they need to do
Yeah.
to get the debt paid off first? And then we'll see if it enhances the cash bottom line.
These suggested rate increases would apply to both the township and the village.
So this is on the O&M piece. So yes, it would apply to system-wide. Now individually, the township and the village need to determine what they want to do with their debt fee. Currently, just real briefly, the debt spreadsheet for the village shows increasing debt payments yearly through 2028. The township has taken a little different route with a safety net of having a cash balance on hand if the debt is not paid off by 2028. So they do have, which I feel will cover any shortfalls. And so it's two different philosophies, if you will. One has a pot of cash sitting there waiting for any shortfalls, and one has projected rate increases in that debt rate, and the debt piece of the ratepayers component. As well as two connections, well, that you're talking about, but that's on the village side.
Mm-hmm.
It's confusing because you've got O&M that, the system runs, and then the debt is held separately. When I came into this project, it took me a while to sort that out and make sure I totally understand. Several times to make sure I understand. And I did, meet with the township as well, and Denise there was helpful, and Joni's been very helpful in trying to, piece this all together, so.
And Denise thought it was a very constructive conversation. This here, very complex, but you did a nice job laying it out so that.
Well, the next two scenarios, I anticipated board questions. This doesn't mean it's realistic to be able to do. I'm sure Jacobs would, agree it's probably not realistic, but I wanted to anticipate questions so we could move forward today and give you more of a complete report. So the next scenario is saying, okay, what if the board says we will not have any more rate increases? I want to emphasize that is very uncommon for any system. So having rate increases is not unique to this area. Every system's costs change yearly, and we should be keeping up with changing costs. What it also shows is the debt in 2028 will not be collected anymore. The $85 will drop off, okay? If we do that, this first year, you're gonna see $185,000. What that is $135,000 that's already been spent. And then I assumed $50,000 on top of that. So I'm assuming you can spend about $50,000 per year through 2032. And remember, we've got still that $1.6 million project sitting out there. So what this shows is we would be able to accomplish $600,000 of $2.5 million through 2032. You'd be obviously a shortfall of about 1.9 million in capital improvements that need to be done. There would be no additional loan, like the first scenario of the $190,000. There would be no rate increases and no debt continuance. This is a scenario that I'm showing you just anticipating board questions. What happens? How can I backed into what you can spend on capital if the board said we're not having any rate increases and we're not continuing the debt.
That's totally irresponsible in my opinion.
And again, and I just was hoping, I was just trying to give you the information, whether you look at this and say, well, we can't do that, then you've got that answer.
Yeah.
Well, we've gone from not a lot of information to knowing what our starting point is and by doing nothing.
Yeah.
That helps a lot. It's for public consumption. If we don't do anything,
that's a recipe for disaster.
Right.
I mean, you're gonna have a failure, and you're not gonna have any way to pay for it. And all of a sudden, we're not gonna have a functioning sewer system.
We've already cut that recipe. in terms of.
No, we don't have,
There was years where there was no rate increases, so
Right.
that's, you know, that's sort of why we.
our,
sort of where
why
we
we
are
had a
right now.
45% raise,
Yeah,
increase
yeah.
this year, and so we don't wanna do that again.
Until this time, everybody had an opinion, this spells out the picture. in
Yeah.
Real numbers.
Right.
That's what we need to do.
So I do want to circle back to Will's original comment, and all of you kind of brought that up right now. In my scenarios, when I had 0, I was just trying to give you a base case.
Yeah.
In reality, you would keep rate increases going with, you know, changes in expenses and stuff to avoid that 45% in the future.
Right.
So what happens is the need for a rate increase doesn't go away, it only compounds. So if you're avoiding a 3% today, you're gonna get a 6% next year and a 9% the next and a 12%, you know, it's a compounding effect anytime we avoid a rate adjustment. So we're trying to I'm just trying to give you like a base case scenario. So the last scenario, I said, okay, what if you guys want something middle of the road, right? And that's the third case, but before I go on to that, do you guys have any questions on this? Okay. So the third case, I said, all right, what if you said no rate increases to the system? We are going to keep the 100% continuance of debt when the debt is paid off. How could we keep cash positive here? How could we stabilize cash here? And keep in mind, the program for the system is $2.5 million that we're ultimately needing to spend. And this program shows about $50,000 a year. And if you kept the debt continuance, you could jump up improvements to $250,000 a year. That would accomplish 1.4 million of 2.5 million. Or as you can see, we definitely have a shortfall in capital. And in addition, we've got the $1.6 million hanging out there in 2038. But I did want to show you, in case, just a middle of the road type scenario. And again, 0% rate increases really aren't realistic for any system across the country. But I'm trying to just answer your questions ahead of time to give you guidance, like a floor and a ceiling, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have any questions on this scenario? No. So what does 7% mean to the ratepayer? Remember, this is on the O&M side. Individually, the village and the township has a debt component to the ratepayer's bill, and they each individually make assumptions on whether that debt charge will go up or not. Currently, it's about, just rounding for both of them, about $85. So the current O&M charge for everybody in the system is $256 a quarter. With a 7% increase, that would go up to $273 a quarter. And of course, each year it would go up by 7% to $293 for the end of the projection period, $335 up per quarter. And that would start next year because 2025 represents it. Okay. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. So when I say we have to do 7%, it'll be built into that budget that we're going to be drafting. And again, this is the best information we know today. All right, these scenarios could change. That's why you should be updating these annually, especially with the budget process, updating them annually. And I'm sure Jacob can attest to this too. I'm updating financial projections that I've done 3 months ago. Things that cost $1 million 3 months ago cost $3 million now. I don't say that to scare you. It's just the reality. And so when I present this, this is the best information we know today. It's always moving and changing, and costs are always increasing, and capital costs are skyrocketing. And so this would be the minimum case scenario.
It's not getting any cheaper.
No.
But under this scenario, so you're 4 years of 7% increases. And then we retire the debt. And then we'll be able to manage our O&M up to that point, up to 2032, right?
If, in my assumptions, if you continue 100% debt collection, the $85, but roll it into the O&M.
And are we still carrying that $190,000 loan?
Super great question. So under scenario one, great question. What you can't see here is this fiscal year, you borrowed $135,000. That will and is incorporated to be paid off by 2028. Okay, that's about $25,000 a year, just rounding, okay, that the system is paying back. This $190,000, since I just made an assumption, since I know you were willing to pay the $25,000 a year, I made an assumption that this would also be $25,000 a year, which carries this out to about 7 years. So great question. The $190,000 would not be paid off till about 2030.
Okay.
Now I can make that be paid off by 2028.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just gonna
Let's pay it off.
maybe bump up the percent or whatever. But I just made the same assumption I was gonna carry the same $25,000 payment, and it just extended the life of the debt.
So the loan terms are to be paid by 2028 because the village needs the money to pay the final bond payment.
Okay, so then I will need to,
It's a lot of moving parts to this.
Yeah.
so what we'll do is, I'll spread that over 5 years. You know, this may bump this up to 7.5, 7.5, 8, whatever it might be. But great question on that, and I didn't know that was in the
Yeah,
so
I'm
thank
sorry.
you. Yeah,
But by 2030, 2032, we're good. We understand owing them, we don't owe any money, we don't have any debt service, nothing on the loan, but now we're starting to move towards the 2036 scenario. 38. So
And-
could anyone explain, or maybe just for the general population, what is happening in 2038? Has anybody
I'm
got?
gonna throw that right at you.
Why 2038, when not?
Yeah, in 2018, the NLTUA hired an engineering firm, not Jacobs, but that did an asset management program. So they did a condition assessment of the whole system and went through and did a very thorough, very good asset management plan they wrote. As part of that asset management plan, they incorporated capital improvement projects, and the 2038 was one of the projects they incorporated. It's hard to look out that far and know exactly, you know, no crystal ball, but they did the best they could to see, so you could plan for it. And that project would be to upgrade the facility, expand the facility if there was a need to expand the way the system's built up there. There's a second basin that's a mirror image of the treatment basin. So we can basically double your capacity by building another MBBR adjacent to it. And that's what that cost was projected, which I think was in $2018.
Yeah.
$2020, I don't remember, but it's in that.
So by 2038, it's gonna be
Could be more.
way more than that.
Well, maybe. I mean,
It could be less.
yeah. Well, it might not be required, might not
Might
be
not be
necessary.
necessary,
Right,
yeah,
if we don't need to
exactly.
expand the
Right.
system.
Right.
No, I mean, I don't want to say it's a worst case scenario, but it's a good case scenario. We have fiduciary responsibility to look at these things. So
Certainly.
you guys
Nothing
bring your
lasts forever.
expertise, say it's probably 1.6 million, and it's not a science. It's
No.
Could be this way and this way, but I appreciate the explanation. So after, I thought I saw another scenario where we start gathering $250,000 a
Yep,
year.
right here. That you could spend. I'm kind of backing into capital, if you will. My scenario here is if the board says no rate increases on the O&M component, how much money could we spend in capital to keep the system cash positive? You're not at the minimum here I even want you to be at, right? If looking at the risks to the system and so forth, I want you to be at least double this. But all I'm trying to do is keep it positive and keep it stable.
No, so I'll interrupt you, sorry. So we're paying the debt off and paying capital, we're paying our loan off. So can we start then after 2032, still have $250,000 a year to go towards the 1.6 million that Jacobs just said we need?
But keep in mind, on average, okay, let's go back up, because on average, you're spending.
If I'm getting way into the weeds, let me know.
No, these are awesome questions.
Okay.
So if you look, on average, I mean, if you just eyeball this and average this number, I don't know, let's round it to $300,000 you're spending on average a year.
Okay.
And again, I'm not an engineer, but, so what I'm saying here is, all right, you would be able to go on, spending $250,000 a year. But remember, before we hit that $1.6 million, we had zeros in column 2033 through 2037. It's only because, I asked Jacobs for the projection period of what my financial projection was, and then I happened to see a piece of paper where $1.6 million was hanging out there, and I did confirm that that is hanging out there. So my point being, in this scenario, you're still already $1.1 million behind. Okay? Because the original projection showed you should be spending 2.5 million.
Right.
You're only spending 1.4, which is, this line here. So to continue at the 250, to answer your original question, the answer is yes. You could continue at the 250, but you also have the accumulating, you're already 1.1 million behind, and you've got 4 years here that weren't projected in the capital plan, and then you've got $1.6 million hanging out there.
So we're $2.5 million behind,
Correct.
essentially,
Correct, yes. With this scenario.
or more, almost 3.
But if Alan gives us, his foundation gives us $2.5 million, then where do we check?
Yeah, that's gonna happen. He's like, what?
All right.
So we've throwing all our eggs in, putting nothing in, and this is kind of the middle of the road.
Yeah,
Like
we
you
don't
said.
wanna do this.
Right, I mean,
Yeah.
the
We'll get that decision, but this is great, what if scenarios for us to look at. Because again, a lot of it's subjective over the years. You guys are bringing some great numbers to it. And again, I'm saying not great numbers like, oh, good, 7% increases, but great that we can make a decision based on numbers versus our opinion.
Good. I was trying to give you the ceiling and the floor, and what happens if you do nothing, because it's easy to say, when you have infrastructure underground, and forget about it. And nobody likes a rate increase, and so you just keep letting it go.
And again, I'm not projecting, or I'm not advocating 7% increases for 4 years, but if we did, want it to be being responsible financially with what we have coming up to us, but also we're in a lot better shape by 2032, right?
Well, you're in decent shape, heading definitely in the right direction.
Okay.
With the risks, I look at what I want you to hold for minimum system, or excuse me, not minimum cash. What I look at in that number is I look at what are you paying for O&M. I look at the historical investment in the system, and I say, what if they have equipment failure? What if they have a main break? What if they have whatever? I want you to have cash on hand. I look at your debt payment, and I say, I always want you to make your debt payment. And I also look at your 5-year capital improvement program, and I look at what I consider your normal capital improvements, and I want you to have cash available at the beginning of the construction year to start your capital. I mean, if you tell me you're gonna spend $300,000 next year, I want you to be able to get rolling on that. So when I look at that, the minimum, meaning if you're approaching this minimum, you're cash critical, I want the system to hold under this scenario is, let's round it at $400,000.
Okay.
You're only at 317. So even under this scenario, are you stellarly financially healthy? Probably not, right? But we're trying to balance appease the ratepayer and keep the system moving in the right direction with improvements and financial health.
Is this model available to us so we could plug in different?
So this is a proprietary model.
Okay.
And so it's not. The beauty of this though is I have your data in the model. And so if you guys call me and say, hey, what's this scenario? I'm gonna charge you hourly, but you're not into the big fee of setting all this up.
Right. Oh,
and we could always increase as you said, there should be an increase every year. So here we stop at 2028. So we could
Correct.
continue those
Yeah.
increases,
Absolutely.
which would be best practice.
Yes.
It absolutely would be best practice.
So that would, again, adjust those numbers down there at the bottom a little bit.
Absolutely.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
No, it's, yeah. Sorry.
And keep in mind, I can come back, I have endless scenarios. I can even do a work session where I take my computer, show it on the screen, and I can plug in any number you want me to plug in there. And it'll automatically, this table is the most powerful table I work with every day. If you say, we want to cut capital, we want to increase capital, we want to have rate increases throughout that projection period, I can tell you instantaneously what it's
Click,
going to be.
click, click, click.
Right, and it'll show you.
Crunch the numbers again.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I think since we have an expert here and we do have members of the public, you could entertain a question from the public if you want to.
Yeah, what I'm thinking about doing is, because the other ones, they're all important, everything's important on here, this is very important. Do we you want to open up to the public comments, so just not one person?
I think a couple of questions would be okay,
Okay.
of her, let's not talk about
No,
public comments.
no, directly.
But if you
Oh,
got a
yeah,
specific
I
question.
just had a question with her. In this scenario, you're going out 8 years. Is it even possible to project what the projected cash balances would be at 2038 without knowing what capital improvements are going to be needed to
Yeah.
be made 6 years beyond that time
I absolutely can do that. And what I would do is just eyeballing that again, maybe $250,000 to $300,000 I would plug in every year, because I know you're gonna have something.
Mhm.
So absolutely, I can bring that out. I just didn't want to bring it out that far and get anybody excited about what's gonna happen in 2038 if we didn't need that.
Yeah, I was just curious
Yeah,
as to,
but yes, I can do that.
that's watching the trend to see what the projected balance would be at 2038, because it seems to be getting better as time,
So in
and-
general, you have a great observation, because in general, that would have built, if you didn't have the $604,000 capital improvement there. You see how start after the gray line, and you see $336,000 for cash, then 238, 227. In general, let's just say that's stabilized. Well, you can see over in the right column, right to the left of that, if you average that out, it's about $250,000. So the reason the cash drops in 2032 to 317 from the 496 is you doubled, in general, what you would spend on average in that year to $600,000.
And
So
there
now
was a
we-
reason for that Jacob's identified something in
Yes.
2032? Okay,
Yeah,
there's gonna be a major
exactly
expense, so
their
that's why.
capital improvement program.
Okay.
So then, if we continued at the $250,000 range, so to speak, cash would start building back up again. So you wouldn't build to the 1.6 million that's needed out in 2038, but certainly you would be way better on track to accomplish your goal of getting that done and or borrowing. Because to borrow $1.6 million on a system that isn't financially healthy might be a little tough.
Okay. Could you explain to the public the debt coverage ratio? So what's the difference between 5.08 and 15.05, just so people understand that?
Super great question. So debt coverage ratio is a measurement of cash flow in each year to pay your debt service payment. Notice I didn't say how much cash do I have on hand to pay my debt payment. It's, am I cash flowing enough in each year to pay my debt payment? It's a measure of debt affordability. So revenue bonds in general, you'll have a bond covenant that revenue bonds require a 1.25 debt coverage ratio, meaning you cash flowed enough from operations to pay your debt service payment 1.25 times. You can see your debt coverage ratio is healthy here, and it skyrockets in 2029 because the only thing that's continuing to be paid is that $190,000 you asked a question on before. And so that skyrockets. It's a very small debt payment after the large debt payment is paid off. So now when I clean up and make the 190 get paid off by 2028, you'll see zeros after that because you won't have any debt. Good question.
So for the public information, higher number is better than low.
Absolutely, higher
Yeah.
number is better.
Just,
It means how many times you can pay your debt payment from cash in that year. The higher the better.
because as we share this out in the public, I just want to make sure we get as much information out there as we can so that they can interpret or define it. One other question, what rate of inflation did you take into account for each year?
Yeah, good question. I did 3.5% in 2024 and 2.9 thereafter.
Okay.
So it's inflation
So there's a 2.9% rate of inflation each year for,
for the O&M expenses.
okay, very good. It's definitely not a puff piece. You did a nice job.
It's,
Well, thank you.
it's really I mean, this is pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad we did this.
Yeah, so we have a roadmap now of where we need to be financially over the next, well, what's that, 8 years?
Yeah.
But, you know,
And people say sewer isn't glamorous.
yeah.
This is cool stuff.
Well, as Mike said, it answers a lot of questions or thoughts we had. I mean, you know, that was, I mean, Rick's big thing was we need hard data from a professional, and that's what we've got now. Thanks, Dawn.
Great. Do you guys have any other questions?
No, but are you going to update that based on the cooking in the 190,000, so we have a roadmap of what our.
Yes, I will clean that up.
Betsy, can you put her?
Are you opening it up to the public to ask a question of Dawn?
Of Dawn, yes.
Quick question, Dawn, when I do the rate increase from the beginning of inception of the sewer for just the O&M, which was the $38 a month, I'm getting a 66% increase so far that we've had. We currently pay $1,350 a year for our sewage, and I'd like to understand what increases you've seen across the country. You mentioned, what is the normal that people are paying for their sewer?
Yeah, so super great question. First of all, I will answer, you asked a couple of questions in there. One is, what's the norm I'm seeing for rate increases? And systems are different all across the country. Obviously, systems that have planned well can sustain smaller rate increases. Systems that haven't planned well are seeing double-digit rate increases. So I'm seeing that spread all across the country. However, I can tell you EPA standards, US EPA standards for water, and really it's kind of related to wastewater affordability as well, per month is about $100 a month. So if you prorate that out, what EPA currently, which is the mean household income across the country, it's about $100 a month for water affordability. So if you take, you bill quarterly. So if you take 3 months, 100 times 3 is about $300 a month. That's what the US EPA would consider affordable. Currently, that's the standards, 2% of the median household income. So you can see you fall within that range until about 2028. Do I see systems lower than the rates you guys are charging here? Absolutely. Do I see systems higher than what you're charging here? Yes, I do. But again, all systems are different across the country. It's in the infrastructure, it's catching up to everybody, right? There are rate increases needed across the country. So great question. So the answer to answer both of your questions is 1, they're all across the board. 2, US EPA standards would consider you in the affordable range until about 2028.
Dawn, thank you. Clarification, when you say a water affordability, are you talking about, did they bundle that rate structure you just mentioned as well water, city water and sewage, or is that just for sewage?
No, so it would be individually for water and individually for sewer. Usually, and it doesn't matter what kind of water you're getting, meaning if it's well, lake, whatever, it's just kind of all bundled up into one word of water affordability. And again, that translates over to wastewater monthly as well.
Okay, so what I guess I'm asking is, the $100 roughly a month, is that on a national average, is that for water and sewer? Or are they paying on average $100 for water a month and $100 for sewer a month?
Correct, $100 for water a month and $100 for sewer a month,
Thank
or
you.
$200 combined.
Thank you.
Good question.
All right, any other questions for Don? Really, really appreciate the work you did.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being here. If you guys have any other questions, make sure and let me know.
No, we needed a roadmap, we needed a roadmap, it's up to us in the public to figure this thing out, so, thank you.
Great, thank you.
This will be available in a written report?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and I will clean up that debt and
Yeah.
get new tables and stuff.
Yeah, because I think people are gonna want to see that.
We're gonna move on to a less exciting topic, the NLTUA liaison job description. Tony, you wanna handle that, or?
Well, I just kept it on the agenda because it was brought up in August,
Yeah.
and our liaison was out of town for that meeting, but I think the board, just some clarity, if the liaison deputy treasurer writes, what her job duties are, and you guys come together to draw up a policy, or, I'm sorry, not a policy, a description, it was the plan, is my understanding.
Well, we can incorporate this into the upcoming budget, because if the liaison salary is gonna be a budget item for the budget we have to do by December, we're gonna need to explore at that point, I think, so.
It's part of the current budget, so.
It's part of the current budget, but we're coming up with a new one.
Sure.
So it's a handoff back to the board, come up with what we think the objectives should be.
Well, it's kind of hard because, my question in an email was just, tell us what you're doing now, and we can write a description around that, and because
Our liaison is here, so.
I know, I'm looking
Yeah,
right at her,
right.
and so, but you don't have to do it right now, but but for upcoming budgeting, if we're gonna approve that line item of the $7,000 for that salary, we really need a job description, or it's not really responsible for us to do it.
Maybe what you can do for us by the end of the week.
Yeah,
Get it
not
straight.
end of the,
Well, no, we got 3 days.
Yeah.
She should know, we're talking to you, but we're
in
not.
a reasonable amount of time.
Right.
I don't want to give you a deadline.
If you can.
But we gotta have it for the budget. We have to have it.
Yeah.
We can't, otherwise we can't put it in the budget if we don't have a job description.
Yep.
Because we'll have to take it out.
We can do that.
Thanks. Okay. Action items. Amendment to the OMI contract.
We're re-upping, is that?
Yeah, it's just our annual amendment, so every year, our contract, we have a base fee escalation percentage that is calculations laid out in the contract, so we go over that and any potential changes. The only changes is that the annual increase this year, the calculation comes out to 4.18%, that's based on the employee cost and consumer price index, blend of those two indexes. The 4.18% is an increase of $7,199 on the previous year's base fee. And then we also update within our contract, there is a table for a labor rate table for any out of scope or labor that you may be requested to use that labor rate table for those projects. So that those rates were updated for 2024. And then the only one, we did request one change in verbiage on the section 3B of the contract annual adjustments. It previously stated the base annual rate for standard services shall be negotiated each 3 months prior to the anniversary of the effective date, so it would have been October. But at the same time, that it says that we use the third quarter ECI and CPI index, and it made it very tight for us to get it to you guys by that deadline. So we just requested that it be provided to you 2 months prior to the expiration, which would be November. And we'd still use the same third quarter.
Yeah, they're asking for answers based on, you haven't even gotten into the month, so.
Right. So do we need to take action to change that rule or change that procedure?
Yes, there will be a motion to accept the 16th amendment to their contract, and then it would be drawn up and our chair would sign that.
Okay, so I thought this was just to approve the cost increase, but if we need to do this procedure, that's fine. Putting it into a motion, I would move that we approve the amendment to the OMI contract as suggested by Jacobs.
Support.
Any discussion?
I think we just have it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thanks, Will. Public comments. Seeing no public comments? No, just kidding.
You knew that. Listening to her report tells me that this board needs to encourage the village and the township to somehow spread this cost to this. The sewer, this project is too big for for the size of it, in my opinion. It benefits the whole township. I believe that you need to make a request to both councils to be looking at a way. And I understand what we did with the metro, and I understand that it failed. There's some other reasons behind how it failed that we need to get changed. In the meantime, even though both of your ordinances say that you will not support the sewer, they both should be changed, by the way. I think that the village and the township have to slow down on some projects until this is taken care of. People are expecting a decrease when the bonds are paid off. And they're going to be very disappointed. Unfortunately, in the township, we can't expand like the village has, and I think it's time for I don't know who does it, but it's time for us to readjust that ratio. The village, or the township, is nowhere near 20% anymore, never could be. The village is adding REUs continuously. We get 1 or 2 in the township, but back when we were looking at this cost, we were suggested that the township needed 130 hookups to meet its obligation. There aren't 130 lots in the township. It's impossible. I asked one of the original people that pushed for this, show me the 150 lots. I don't have to. They've never been there. And I know that you don't like to go back to the way we started, but in the township, one property owner was the equivalent to probably the entire township that signed their petition. And that one property owner does not have an REU. And interestingly enough, he lives on Northport Point, who we have to deal with some other way. So it's time for this board to tell these boards that we have to get some help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and the other thing is I was disappointed, and I don't understand why, but there was no advance information. I could see you guys even reading the minutes. I don't know that they even had them out in advance. I wasn't sure.
No, we got I mean,
well, aren't they supposed to be posted?
It'd be good if we did.
There was no packet.
Yeah.
There will be.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
Any additional public comments from Betsy?
All right, wasn't unmuting. I appreciate what Alan just said. I too, being in the sewer, none of this board is in the sewer, so we're carrying the brunt of this burden. I heard the consultants say that it's sort of normal. However, $1,350 when you've got mostly non-residents in the township is a burden because you're not metering it. So and I understand why, because you need the money. You've always needed the money to support the system. That has been the whole push for the township even being involved. So as we go forward, I agree with Alan. I think we have to look at it as two municipal bodies that looked at the greater good for the environment and for the sustainability of the village. We have a sewer and we have to figure out how to pay for it. I'm hoping that we continue to see connections. I think that will help with the balancing of the budget. But in the meantime, I am strongly opposed to putting a burden on either the village or the township of another 7%, 10%, whatever it is. And I too agree that a lot of people think this is going to come off at the end of the debt. I never thought so, guys, because I didn't believe what I was told in the beginning. So I've known that we were going to have a burden. We said that. We said we were going to be $2 million short. Unfortunately, there were deaf ears. So we are in this pickle now because of not planning accordingly. The politicians at the time did not want to raise our rates because they didn't want to show their hand that they had erred in their numbers. I have issues with the state of Michigan having handed out the check for 13 million without even checking. Their answer to me was, we just take what your local officials tell us. That's not a good thing either. Some checks and balance needed to have happened. And so as you go forward and you look at it, I do think you need to go back to your respective municipal boards. And I do think you need to find out how we can, as we go forward, we are taxpayers. Our taxes do not stay stagnant. Our taxes, our revenues increase to the municipalities. So certainly there are monies there. Maybe they can be aligned somehow with the tax increases that go on, and that would help pay for the debt load that you've got. I respect what this board is trying to do. Don't misunderstand me. But I've got a lot of baggage here. I've lived through it. And as a user, I am asking you to look at this in totality and figure out a way that does not burden us any further, or minimally at best. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Mr. Duggar?
I had two or three. Number one, can somebody tell me how many sewer connections we actually have? I've been trying to get this number for a couple of months. And I was gonna ask Dawn when she slipped out. I thought maybe she would know.
It's, we know how many RUs we bill for. Connections can be, we send multiple bills, so we can certainly give you an answer.
You know what?
I have to go and print, I
You don't
have to go
have
and
it,
look,
okay.
I don't know it off the top of my head.
Second,
It's not gonna be exact, is what I'm trying to say. We know how many RUs, and that's what she's doing.
maybe I should use the RU number instead of the connection number. Secondly, on the public open house, I had no knowledge of that either, and I think a public open, it was discussed last spring. I remember sitting here when it was discussed. But I think it's a great idea, and I hope you continue to do it, but you gotta find a way to tell the public that come see our facility. And then my third comment is, I want to compliment Rick Cross, who's not here, because Rick pressed for this study with Dawn. This board and this community has needed that information for a long time. That was the best presentation about where the NLTUA is that I have ever heard, because it's always been kind of smoke and mirrors behind the curtain stuff. I believe the public wants scenario one. No increases, no nothing, go away. I never felt that that was a possibility. I always thought that when 2028 came around, that debt service would go to the operations and maintenance. This helped me understand what the gap was, which is even greater than what I anticipated. So all I can say is at some point in the future, you're going to have Dawn back and do that work session and plug in this and plug in that and get a better feel for where you're going to go. The comments that Betsy and Alan made, I don't think they're appropriate for today, but it looks to me like that's the kind of discussion and conversation that needs to continue to go forward. But that's not your immediate task. Your immediate task is to get this all straightened out. So thank you for a good meeting. And I really want to thank Dawn for her work because that was very, very helpful.
Thank you. Any other public comments? All right, not seeing any. Member comments?
Just a couple things. Is there a reason the NLTUA doesn't have a Dropbox set up for meeting packets? Can we do that in the future? Or should I be asking the liaison?
I do it.
You do it? Yeah, because I think I was getting texts before the meeting, people are like, where's the packet, where's the packet? And I think we've gotten, since COVID, everybody's gotten used to the Dropbox packets for the village meetings, and I don't know if the township does it, I think they probably do. But we should probably have a Dropbox set up for the NLTUA. In terms of, some of the comments made, it's, what I've learned is, especially through the rate study and talking to Dawn, I've talked to her for over an hour about this stuff, about the preview of today. And we talked in general terms of our system and what we can and can't do going forward. And until 2028, there's really, our hands are tied on both sides, on the village and the township side, in terms of making any significant change. And this is also what Steve Mann, the bond attorney, said. You can't just go change these ordinances because you open yourselves up for liability. And so until the bond is paid off, we can't do anything in terms of real reform that people want to see. And that's why it's so important. And Doug, you got it backwards. Scenario 1 was a 7%, and now it's going to be 7.5% probably when she gets done crunching it. That's why we have to get this bond paid off on time and not kick it down the road. So we can actually get out from under the yoke of the bond, and we could maybe go to a use-based system or install meters or something. We could look at those things, sliding scale, seasonal. We can't do any of that right now. We are handcuffed to what we were given. And I didn't live here in 2006. I had nothing to do with putting this together. I got on this board, and we've inherited this, albatross. And we got to make it fly the best we can, and that's what we're doing. And by the way, Rick, I found Dawn and brought her to Rick. So
I was going to correct that.
Yeah, and so Rick and I both pushed for this rate study. And I think we're really in a much better place in terms of transparency, in terms of the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm feeling a lot better and understanding this better, and I think we're doing some good work. So that's my comment.
Any other comments? I thought it was a great start for the work that we have ahead of ourselves. So if you kind of get stewards for dummies, that was a great presentation for us to. But a lot of work ahead of us, but at least we've got a path now. So I would say no member comments. Adjournment.
I'll move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right.
Can we have a copy of what will?
Talk to Johnny. Yeah.
I'd like to take a copy home.
Yeah. I don't. Yes.
Is
Ask
this it's like a.
Yeah, I'm editing confused, but I thought
That's not
the
my
one was
email address.
no rating.
Yeah.
No.
Email from me
Her
saying,
scenario
"Oh,
1 was the
can
one.
you help me with
where
something? Cindy,
No
I just
sense
been.
whatsoever.
So, since you missed the
I
open
used to
house,
get emails
and I
from
missed the
Steve
open
Weatherby
house.
asking me to buy